Hello, I'm Joseph Haldane, President of the International Academic Forum, Asia's think tank, and I'm here at the Asian Conference on Ethics, Religion and Philosophy 2016. I'm joined today by featured presenter Dr. Tan Tarn, who's a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies at the Kuan School at the National University of Singapore. Mr. Tan is today speaking about philosophy, public policy and education in East Asia, but with particular relation to Singapore. Mr. Tan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joseph.
So perhaps you can give us a brief overview of what you'll be speaking about.
Well, I'll be talking about how internationally, in particular in Singapore and the East Asian countries, there's been a focus on economic growth as one of the prime goals of government. And I think that it's about time that we move towards a more holistic idea of what public policy should be for and what education should be for. And I draw from the field of philosophy to say that philosophical discussions about the meaning of life, what's the meaning of well-being, what's the meaning of happiness, should inform public policy as well as educational policy.
So very interesting. So you're drawing on many different disciplines, and in your work, in fact, to go through a short list, which I have in front of me here, you've been an academic, a teacher, a television, political and foreign correspondent, a script writer, a playwright, a theatre director. So you're a very accomplished individual in a number of different fields. How important is interdisciplinarity to you in what you're doing?
I think it's extremely important. I think that it's not important only for academic work, but all other fields in life as well. So from in playwriting, for example, I try to draw from science, from philosophy, from everyday the way that we live, and of course sociology as well. So I think that we should bring an interdisciplinary approach to everything we do and not do it from the point of view of silo. And especially since I'm a public policy researcher as well, and we are required, and it's considered a gold standard to be able to draw from all these fields and not just from one particular field. Okay,
very interesting. Now, you describe yourself as an arts activist. What does it mean to be an arts activist in Singapore?
Well, it means that your job is particularly difficult for two reasons. The first being that Singapore has been an authoritarian society where freedom of expression, even though guaranteed constitutionally has been limited by other laws, and therefore people who come and try to change society and do it outside the system will find particular difficulties and face resistance from government. I think the other problem is the position of arts in society in Singapore, that we have become, over the last 50 years since independence, very much deculturalized. And part of the reason is that the emphasis on competition, on the economy, has led people to neglect the arts and culture. And therefore, we do not just face a challenge from government, but from the people. And they were saying that why is the arts important to us? Why is culture important to us? And they don't see that it's fundamentally important to them as human beings, So I think we find that even we have to fight that very fundamental battle.
So Singapore is an interesting case, isn't it? Because you have different ethnic backgrounds and a national language of English, which in many ways enables certain particular ethnic backgrounds or language backgrounds to be neutralized, perhaps. And art within as you say, a cleansed sort of environment maybe has a difficult way of taking root, or perhaps there is a desire to separate the art that is public from the art which is sort of coming from the ground up.
Okay, I think that it's an extremely interesting question that in Singapore we have 4 official languages, of which English is the mainly used in business, in government offices and so forth. So the mother tongue languages, Mandarin, Malay and Tamil, find difficulty establishing themselves among the younger people. So there's a move towards English, and of course we've come to that. There's westernization and loss of traditional cultures. So how do we therefore draw from our traditional cultures? And I think that's difficult. You find that among the young people there is no love, or not even love, but interest in traditional culture, and that artists who try to integrate the different kinds of culture into their work, intercultural work, actually do not necessarily find that people are interested in that. So that's a problem.
Okay, I want to expand the discussion now to arts and arts education in general, but also to take the conversation perhaps a bit outside of Singapore to the global context. And there's certainly in an environment where you have a number of sort of key statistics or indices of, relating to performance, it's a lot more difficult to appraise or evaluate the arts on those sort of tables and scales. And so throughout the world, the arts have had somewhat of a difficult period recently with defunding of certain subjects as not being relevant. What do you have to say about that on a global level and also in relation to Singapore? Is Singapore feeling any of that?
Yes, I think that there are two issues here. One is the flight from the arts and culture in general, and then the flight from arts and culture education. And Singapore is also part of the trend with respect to arts and culture education, where there is strong emphasis on subjects with economic value on engineering, for instance, accountancy or information technology. And the arts has always taken, has increasingly placed second fiddle to these more technocratic economic subjects. However, what's happening in Singapore, which is interesting, is that the government has been a very strong funder of the arts. And it's a bit ironic that while they have instituted policies which has led to deculturalization, in the last 10-15 years they have actually tried to bring that back by pumping a lot of money. So in the West, there's when the economy goes down, the arts and culture is always the one which faces first the guillotine, right? In Singapore, to some extent, but still the arts budget has been increasing. So I think we are lucky in that sense.
Okay, fascinating. And I'm lastly going to turn the conversation around to the conference, which is where we're at, which has kicked off this morning with a lot of interesting presentations. This is the second time you've been to this particular IAFOR conference. Can you tell us what were your experiences and what's your experience been so far and why you came back?
Oh, it has been great. It was great last year. I came to ACEID and this year I'm at ASAP. What I find interesting, and it relates to what you said earlier about the interdisciplinary idea, that the conferences that IAFOR have are extremely interdisciplinary. So this morning I heard stuff on suicide, I heard stuff on religion and you know, LGBT issues. Then I can hear things about psychology, which I'm interested in, and then there are talks on philosophy. So that's really great. I find that, you know, it's like a buffet in which, wow, which one do I go to, right? And the other thing I think that it's very interesting that the kind of people who come, it's very international, many from the West, but also many from Asia, Indonesia, Taiwan. And sometimes you go to other conferences, you don't see that many people from these countries. So I think it's been great as well.
I think that's one of the things we're trying to do, to give appropriate voices to different voices within Asia. Whereas quite often it tends to be Hong Kong, Singapore, maybe Japan, and then separately the Southeast Asian countries. Whereas to bring together these different perspectives, there's often a lot more common ground than perhaps.
Yes, and you certainly find it at the conferences here.
Yes. Well, Mr. Tan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. And please keep up to date with all IAFOR's news by looking at our website or by coming along to one of our conferences. In the meantime, I'd encourage you to look at www.iafor.org or also our new Think magazine platform at www.think.iafor.org. Thank you very much.